Hello, I'm Li Jianhua. Welcome to Global Business Europe. Our top stories. South Korea's chipmaker SK Hynix is making the largest ever listing by a foreign firm in the US market. Shares in Chinese space companies surge after reusable rocket booster is landed for the first time. France calls an emergency meeting in the face of a deadly heat wave and unprecedented demand for energy to cope with it. And the Norwegian striker lighting up the World Cup both on and off the pitch. Experts calling him a genius in brand marketing. Well, South Korean computer chip maker SK Hynix has raised over $26 billion in its New York share offering, marking the largest ever listing by a foreign firm in the US. Our correspondent Mitch McCann is in New York. Mitch, great to see you. So tell us more about the company's US debut today.
Yeah, that's right. Good afternoon from New York. SK Hynix is the second most valuable company in South Korea. It trails only Samsung, and the business specializes in making computer memory, which is used in mobile phones and in computers to store short-term data. Now, NVIDIA and Apple are reportedly among its biggest customers. Now, starting today, SK Hynix its ADRs, or American Depository Receipts, begin trading on the NASDAQ. They allow American investors to buy into this company, even though it's listed in South Korea. The simplest way to think about the ADRs is that it trades like a stock. Now, ahead of the listing, as you mentioned, the receipts were priced at $149 a share, raising $26 billion US, which really highlights strong investor demand. Now, the latest news is that when this opened at 11:30 this morning, it really surged, and the latest price I have seen for the company is $173, so a 16% rise above that initial price, so a good result for those early investors. And the company's valuation has risen more than 7 times in the last year because of that increasing demand for AI infrastructure, and that's led to a shortage of computer memory, and it's led to high prices. So we're seeing that this morning. So a good early result for investors as this company lists on the NASDAQ here in the US.
Yeah, exactly. Good early results, Mitch. And I'm pretty sure that the company's rivals are watching, including Micron and Samsung. So how are they performing today?
Yeah, I imagine they're watching very, very closely. Micron, when I last looked a short time ago, was down 2% this afternoon, really capping a week of highs and lows for the company. But, of course, there are still about 4 hours left in trading today for the company headquartered in Idaho. Samsung isn't listed in the US, but it was up 2.5% on the Korea exchange today. But if we bring you up to date with the broader markets as we near the end of the final trading day this week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average a short time ago was up 0.2%. The S&P 500 up 0.16%, and the NASDAQ was barely changed when I last looked a couple of moments ago. It was up 0.04%. Another point of interest, given what we've seen in geopolitics this week, Brent crude is sitting around $75.50 a barrel, so down a touch where we saw it yesterday. But, of course, any Truth Social message from Donald Trump or any communication from those negotiations can change that price drastically in a short amount of time. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that as well.
Thank you, Mitch. That is our correspondent, Mitch McCann. And Matthew Maley is the Chief Market Strategist at Miller Tabak & Company. Matthew, great to have you on the show again. So you have heard really good early results. So do you think this is giving the chip stocks more confidence in the US?
Well, it certainly isn't hurting them. I mean, it's interesting how the chip stocks, after a huge rally in in April and May, have flattened out in the last couple of weeks. And we've also seen some interesting movements when some of these companies reported earnings. We saw Broadcom, the stock, they didn't give very good guidance, so the stock went down. Micron, that's one where they initially rallied strongly, and then that rolled over. And then this week, we had Samsung report very good earnings, and yet that stock rolled over at the same time. So this is something that's helping offset some of this sell the news reaction we've seen from some of these chip companies recently. So it's definitely something that's helping the marketplace.
Well, Matthew, some are saying that the market is really crowded with semiconductor stocks. What's your take on that?
That's definitely true. I mean, you look at in the U.S., the chip stocks make up almost 20% of the S&P 500 index. That's the most crowded it's ever been. And we also saw an interesting survey by Bank of America recently that said that 80% of institutional investors saw it as the most crowded trade they had ever, the most crowded the chip stocks had ever been. So it does raise some warning flags that if at some point we see a slowdown in demand, you could see a big unwinding of this trade.
I think for many of the potential investors, let's say, the question is how safe of a bet is this for investors to keep pouring money in the AI industry?
I do worry that this is becoming a problem. I mean, I realize that people keep pouring, like you say, people keep pouring money into it, but we're still not getting that return on investment from the big hyperscalers that we need to see to convince us that the demand will continue for many years to come, which is really what the market is pricing in.
Okay, thank you very much. That is Matt Maley, the Chief Market Strategist at Miller Tabak & Company. Well, EasyJet is facing a new takeover battle after U.S. private equity firm Apollo made a higher $7.7 billion bid, overtaking rival Castle Lake's offer. The airline's board has switched its backing to Apollo's proposal, which could see one of Europe's biggest low-cost carriers change of ownership. Fast fashion retailer Shein has won approval for its long-awaited Hong Kong IPO, clearing the way for a listing after failed attempts in New York and London. Shein has been trying to go public for nearly 3 years and filed confidentially in Hong Kong a year ago. This would be the highest-profile retailer to list in years, as many consumer brands have delayed IPOs due to weak spending. The China-Europe Railway Express has delivered its first petrochemical shipment. It's arrived in Poland 15 days after leaving Lanzhou. That's around a quarter of the time it would have taken by sea. The company PetroChina views Central and Eastern Europe as an important strategic market. Well, China has landed an orbital-class rocket booster for the first time in a major breakthrough. The Long March 10B was captured using a cable recovery system, technology unique to China's space program. It puts the country one step closer to developing reusable rockets, opening up access to space. Well, Dara Patel is from the UK National Space Centre.
We see America, and they've been demonstrating, at least through their commercial companies, reusability for over a decade now. So notably SpaceX, but also Blue Origin with their New Glenn rocket are working towards this as well. And actually what it means is that commercially we also have the ability to take other countries' payloads or satellites into space. So there's definitely a business implication here. It's not just about sending things into space from national capability, but actually having a market around the world that can come to you with their satellites and payloads and use your rocket, your reusable rocket, to take things into space.
And what are the real-world implications of that in terms of business? I can see how that improves telecoms and stuff like that, but I mean, what else?
So a lot of what we're doing now is actually paving the way to going beyond low Earth orbit too. So rockets have to use an incredible amount of fuel to get into low Earth orbit. It's an incredibly costly process, and actually if we want to escape the Earth's gravity altogether and head to places like the moon, then actually we're going to need rockets that are capable of doing this and at lower and lower costs if possible. So we know that NASA is already looking with their Artemis program and using commercial companies to help make it possible to land humans on the moon. By 2028 is their goal, but China also have the same mission. They're hoping to land at least a couple of Chinese astronauts on the moon by the year 2030, and having a reusable orbital style vehicle like this is going to make it that much easier.
The United States has pretty much dominated reusable launch technology for the last decade, really, I guess. I mean, does this Chinese success suggests that the technological gap between the two countries is perhaps beginning to narrow a bit?
Yeah, we've seen since 2015 when SpaceX successfully recovered their Falcon 9 booster. And we've seen since then other companies, like I mentioned, Blue Origin, demonstrating a similar capability with some of their rockets. We're now seeing this from China, but I wouldn't say that China are very far behind, in the sense that there's already the Chinese Tiangong space station in space. They may not be part of the International Space Station, but they're already demonstrating crewed kind of outposts in space. Their plans for lunar kind of exploration are also successfully undergoing, with notable robotic missions having landed on the surface of the moon. The first one to land on the far side of the moon, bringing back samples since the Apollo missions. So the gaps are definitely closing, but I think they're closer in terms of competition than one might actually see at first glance.
Well, that is Dara Patel from the UK National Space Centre. And this is Global Business Europe, still ahead. Crisis talks in France, deadly wildfires in Spain, and unprecedented demands for energy. How Europe is dealing with ongoing heat wave.
Everything is a business story.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. The headlines again. South Korea's chip maker SK Hynix is making the largest ever listing by a foreign firm in the US market. 5 of the world's largest car makers have won the first stage of a legal battle a decade after the so-called Dieselgate scandal. The lawsuit claims that 20 sampled diesel vehicles from Mercedes, Ford, Peugeot, Citroën, Renault and Nissan were designed to cheat clean air regulations. Our correspondent Michael Marilia has been following the story. So Michael, what more can you tell us about that?
Well, this ruling came out just a couple of hours ago, Jinhua. The judge basically slamming the claimants for not being able to prove that there was intention to actually deceive the testers when they were testing whether or not these vehicles were emitting certain amounts of pollution. So the manufacturers, as you said, were accused of using something called a defeat device. Now, this defeat device allegedly reduced emissions during lab tests, but did not do the same when used on the roads. So the manufacturers were accused of trying to conceal how much pollution they were actually emitting. They were facing a claim, Jinhua, of roughly $8 billion, but Judge Sarah Cockrell saying that for a defeat device to be found, there needs to be an intention to cause the emissions control system to operate differently when it senses that it is being tested. She also said not every calibration or emissions control strategy amounts to a defeat device. So intention really being at the core of this ruling. The judgment nearly 370 pages long, so this was not a simple case, and there were some findings that could land certain manufacturers in trouble. The court making an adverse finding against a device that was in a Peugeot Citroën Euro 5 car, as well as one that was in a Mercedes model. That device was removed in late 2015. So Mercedes has responded to that, saying that it plans possibly to launch an appeal against that ruling. Stellantis, which owns Peugeot Citroën, also suggesting that it could appeal that ruling and saying that it never intended to mislead anyone. So they are hitting back at the adverse findings against them. Overall, though, the court ruling in favour of these manufacturers. One, the UK's Transport Department not quite so pleased, Jinhua, saying that defeat devices are illegal. It acknowledges the court's decision, but will continue with an investigation that it is already conducting. So this saga is certainly not over.
Yeah, Michael, as I said, it is saga. It's not a simple case, and it's been ongoing for quite a while. And this is not the first emission scandal involving some major European car makers, apparently. So what is the bigger picture here?
Well, the big picture really is that authorities want to reduce this pollution, and many of them are skeptical about what manufacturers are doing. Go back to 2015, we had the Volkswagen emissions scandal. It faced fines and compensation worth $26 billion around the world that was related to these so-called defeat devices, which apparently, allegedly, were fooling the testers and convincing them that the nitrogen oxide coming out of VW vehicles was not nearly as high as it actually was. Volkswagen also paid roughly $260 million to British claimants. So you can just go back 10 years, and that was really the start of this. And certainly in October this year, we may see the next chapter, because that's when this court is likely to rule on any damages that the likes of Mercedes and Peugeot Citroën may have to pay related to the latest findings.
Okay, thank you very much. That is Michael Marilia. Well, France's Prime Minister has held crisis talks on the country's power grid, which is struggling due to a surging air conditioning use. The country is heavily reliant on nuclear energy, but warmer river temperatures caused by the heat wave are creating challenges for reactors which use water for cooling. Dr. Paul Dorfman is a Bennett Scholar at the University of Sussex. Doctor, great to have you here. So, first of all, how would you evaluate the French power system?
The French power system, the electricity system, is largely based, significantly based on nuclear power and all that implies. The problem here is that France, EDF, which is the Electricité de France, the nuclear power corporation, which is 100% state-owned, has put offline another set of reactors on the Rhône River, on the Garonne River, on the Meuse River. So that's about 1 in 10 nuclear reactors are about offline now in France, and all that implies for French power.
And how would prolonged, extensive heat waves impact nuclear power facilities in France right now? And we have seen this is the second, probably the third heat wave in Europe.
Well, perhaps helpfully, all of a sudden, EDF France has announced about 11.7 billion euros to start to try to address this key problem. And so far, EDF's discussion is building cooling towers, these towers that you often see emitting what is essentially water vapor. But the problem with that is that it means a very significant loss of water from evaporation, either from the rivers or the groundwater in an increasingly water-scarce world. Now, a normal nuclear reactor, both in France and elsewhere, inland, takes about 500,000 gallons per minute to cool. And if the temperature rises to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, the cooling water needs about 700,000 gallons per minute. That's about nearly 3 million litres per minute. So you can imagine what that means in terms of the draw-off for cooling water.
And what is your outlook for the French energy policy, especially nuclear policies, in light of the recurring extreme weather events?
This has very significant implications both for France and for other nuclear endeavours, and indeed the nuclear renaissance. The reality is that wind and solar now dominate global electricity generation. In 2025, renewables became the bedrock of European power reliance. And the key thing to take home is this. Each year, new nuclear adds only as much net global power capacity as renewables adds every 2 days.
And Doctor, we have to admit that Europe is absolutely getting hotter and hotter. And how about its infrastructure? And given that they probably will change their policies, but how about the infrastructure? Do you think it is too late?
It's always too late. It's never too late. It's clear that the renewable evolution is here. Every substantive international organization institute states quite clearly that the renewables will do the heavy lifting for net zero. So the question is not simply about the source, the generation of the power, but the infrastructure that then translates that power into industry, into dwellings and domestic. So what we really need to think about more than anything now is infrastructure.
Well, thank you very much for your insights. That is Dr. Paul Doffman from the University of Sussex.
Thank you.
Well, the Goodwood Festival of Speed is underway in southern England. The annual motorsports gathering offers a chance for manufacturers to show off their latest models. Well, this year, a growing number are Chinese. I went along to the Goodwood estate to take a look.
Music, car lovers, fireworks in daylight and, of course, roaring racing cars. For Britain's many car enthusiasts, Goodwood is definitely the place to be this week. Since its inception in 1993, the famous hill climb, a course nearly 2 kilometers long, has been at the heart of this festival of speed. But increasingly, the event is becoming a chance for car makers to draw attention to their brands. China's EV giant BYD has the festival's largest stand this year, showcasing its expanding lineup.
The next level, I think we're going to do more building BYD brand and then tell BYD story. I think BYD story is not told enough yet. A lot of people did not know BYD, did not really understand the power behind the 120,000 R&D engineer behind, 52 patents per working day behind. So this is the kind of story we need to tell because our mission is really use technology to changing the world and then use technology to deliver affordable solution to combat climate change.
BYD only began selling cars in the UK 3 years ago, but sales have risen rapidly. In the first half of the year, the company sold nearly 38,000 cars in the UK, nearly double the previous year. MG, an icon of British motoring history, now under Chinese ownership, is debuting 2 electric concept cars, the MG Go and the MG Cyber concept.
We have the very open-minded vision on innovations and technologies from China and very high speed and ability to deliver great quality with very, let's say, European strong heritage-oriented as well view on the car which is not just the technology but is as well experience and emotion.
As electric vehicles make further inroads, Formula E is making its Goodwood debut this year with electric racing.
We might be phasing out some of the sort of combustion engine, but we're not phasing out motor cars. And I always think the celebration of those old cars will always continue. That harking back to the heritage of motorsport and a place where you can see those classic cars, I think there'll always be a place for that.
Here, the past and future of the motor car are increasingly sharing the same track.
Well, as teams battled it out for a place in the World Cup semi-finals, Norway's Erling Haaland has become something of a social media phenomenon. Experts say he is boosting Norway's visibility in sport and also economically. Here is our correspondent Siobhan McCall. Siobhan?
Thanks, Jianhua. Yes, Haaland has been putting updates in Chinese on his social media during the tournament, like in this post. Well, his popularity in China has seen him land major business deals, including becoming the global ambassador for Chinese herbal drink brand. And the Manchester City forward is also a brand ambassador for home appliance giant Midea. And he's the face of the Norwegian Seafood Council, a partnership which has led to booming sales of Norwegian salmon in China. Well, in June, exports to China were up 31% year on year, and export values, well, they were up 21%. They were up to, as you can see there, $86 million. Norway says it's linked to Haaland's popularity, and I Choose Salmon from Norway was actually a trending topic on Xiaohongshu. Fans have even gone wild for the hair ties that he wears during matches. They're coordinated to the colour of his kit, and they're by an Oslo-based business that he has a stake in. And their Haaland edition, released just for the World Cup and priced at over $30, has already sold out. Norway's kit is also out of stock, with some fans camping overnight to try and get hold of it. Well, Norway sold 50,000 shirts in 2025. This year, it's actually 5 times as much as that, 250,000. It's normal to see an increase in a World Cup year, but experts say the number of non-Norwegian fans buying the shirt is unprecedented and due to the Haaland effect. Well, Haaland and the Norway fans' Viking Row celebration also leading to more interest in Norway as a tourism destination. Scandi Summer is becoming a trend on Instagram. So what is it about this 6'5" player that makes him so marketable? Well, obviously his football ability. He's Norway's all-time goal scorer, and he's also broken numerous goal-scoring records for his club, Manchester City, 162 goals in 198 games. And it's more than that. Fans say humour makes him relatable. He's not afraid to poke fun at himself, like in this post here, comparing himself to Shrek. And his playful personality also contrasts with his physical strength on the pitch. And his interviews are always unfiltered.
It's like many other things. I'm just really good at scoring goals.
I couldn't care too much about that game now. They're probably going to win against us. They're probably going to win the whole tournament. I know he won the headline, but I'm a bit cleverer than that. I'm Norwegian. I'm the social media guy.
And his walk is even popular, with many fans recreating it in viral posts. Fans in China say that players like Cristiano Ronaldo are a superstar from afar, but Haaland feels like a friend. And talking of Ronaldo, well, 25-year-old Haaland is tipped to follow in his footsteps and become football's next billionaire, particularly if Norway go all the way at this World Cup. Back to you, Januar.
Oh, thank you very much, Siobhan McCall. Yeah, the way he walked, I can tell you that man is really popular now in China. So the headlines again. South Korea's chipmaker SK Hynix is making the largest ever listing by a foreign firm in the US market. Shares in Chinese-based companies surge after reusable rocket booster is landed for the first time. And France calls an emergency meeting in the face of a deadly heat wave and unprecedented demands for energy to cope with it. And that is for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching. More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com. And do follow CGTN Europe on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And you can go to CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app or scan the QR code on screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. Coming up next on CGTN Africa Live. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Now from all the team in London, that's goodbye.